good afternoon, and welcome to At the King's Table, God's Word to You with Apostle Tevin Neal. We are, let me get the camera adjusted and get everything adjusted. Just bear with me. Okay, we are on. So again, welcome to At the King's Table, God's Word to You with Apostle Tevin Neal, who is out today. I do want to say thank you all for your prayers, your text messages, your inboxes, and phone calls in regards to Apostle Neal. He is doing much better, and so we do appreciate all of you guys' support um, and love and prayers that you have been sending. So again, this week we are doing the After the Vows series. We will continue to do that series until Apostle Neil picks back up. But this week, our topic will be becoming one, and we're going to just have an open discussion about becoming one in marriage. And so, feel free to post your questions, feel free to comment, all of those good things, as we just kind of have an open forum in regards to that topic and how we talked about it in After the Vows book. Okay, so I believe Um, again, I am manning the show as well as the back end of it. So just bear with me as I continue to do both of those. So what we want to talk about today again is After the Vows. And the book did launch on the 17th of January. And I am super excited. I do appreciate everybody that has sent me text messages and pictures of the book. I haven't even gotten a copy of the book yet. Mine is still in the mail, and everybody has gotten theirs. So I do appreciate the support and the love, as well as the special that we have going on, which is a book bundle with both Apostles and my book. And so the book bundle is both of our books, signed copies. You can get them on atnministries.org, but you get both signed copies for a book bundle price of $35. Um, if you haven't gotten them yet, definitely go on to ATN Ministries and request your copy, and we will get them signed and get them out to you guys. Okay, so our topic today is becoming one in marriage. So in the book, we discuss several different ways of becoming one. And one of the first things that God did with Apostle and I is take two people and make them one. Um, saying I do doesn't make you one, which is what I originally thought was going to happen. I thought I was going to say I do, and we were going to change our I was going to change my last name, and I was going to become a wife. I was going to become one. We were going to become connected and become the Neils, and that's not what happened. So today we're just going to talk about what it takes to become one, in the natural and in the spiritual. So if you have, like, again, if you have questions, if you have comments, definitely post them, post your questions, and let's kind of dig into this subject today and see where God leads us. So, as you know, in After the Vows, I'm very transparent about our relationship. I'm very transparent about the journey that God took me on to become a godly wife. And one of the first things that he taught me was that saying I do does not make you one. So what we had to do was go through not only a physical transformation, but also a spiritual transformation to becoming one. My last name was Neil, but my heart wasn't a Neil. I was still carrying myself and conducting myself as a single person. Um, I think I said no, it was not easy because I was used to having my own space, my own time, my own decision making process, my own me. And most of you know that my husband and I met July 24th, and on September 24th, we were married. So 2 months of knowing each other, we got married. And so, because of the way because of the way my job was set up, my husband opted to um, move in with me instead of me going to his house. Now, before we got married, we had our own separate everything. We had our own cars, we had our own houses, we had our own businesses, we had our own finances. We had everything separate. So we began to blend things, and as we blended things, is where the problem for me began because I've been the boss of me for a long time, so I really didn't need a man to come tell me how to be the boss of me. And so, even though he wasn't trying to be the boss of me, that's just how I took it. So, one of the things that I had commented on this post in the marriage club was that the first physical sign that we were trying to become one was my husband's belongings. And so he brought his belongings over when he moved in, and I left his belongings in like the bags and the suitcases and stuff that he had, because where was he gonna put them at? I had all this space occupied. I mean, there was plenty enough room, but in my mind, it's all my space. So for a long time, not a long time, but for I'm gonna say about the first couple of weeks, maybe his stuff was still in his stuff was still in his suitcases. And I went to work one day and I came home and he had taken his stuff out the suitcases because clearly I wasn't. And he had begun to put his colognes up and his shoes up and his clothes in my space. And I was saying, like, when is he going home? Why is he putting his stuff in my space? And I remember calling my godmother saying something is wrong. And she said, no, it's not. You're married. What do you mean? When is he going home? He's at home. You guys are now one, and you guys, so this was like a physical, I guess, like a physical shocker to me of what was to come in the spiritual. Like, we needed to become one. I had to share. I had to move things out of the way in the natural to allow him to come into this marriage, this life that we had already said I do too. And it didn't just happen automatically. We had to work at it. And so we began to move my clothes aside and put his clothes in and change where I put this and all my, where I would keep. I had a whole, some of y'all know I have a Bath and Body Works, addiction. And so at this point in time in our life, I had Bath and Body Works everywhere, in every closet and everything. And so I had a whole area on my bathroom cabinet where I would put um, all of my smell goods. And he began to put his up there, and I'm like, no, this is mine. So then had to create space for him. So in the natural, so in the spiritual, we have to create space in our lives and in our marriage for each other. We have to become one. And so that was very hard for us to do. And so that's really what we're talking about today is, what steps do you take to become one? How do you know when you're not one? Um, what really is one? The Bible talks about us being equally yoked, and you could be equally yoked and still not be one. So you could be equally yoked and still not be one. It's very important for you to understand that, because equally yoked is us having the same heart, the same mind, the same process. It's us talking about it's us talking about having the same, being on one accord, but that doesn't mean that we're one. So even though I think like you, I talk like you, we have the same goals, visions, and dreams for our marriage, it doesn't mean that we're one. So just because you're equally yoked, you have to understand that that's completely different than being one. Being one is having a covenant. Being equally yoked doesn't mean that you have a covenant. It just means that you are have the same mindset and heart. It's very important that you make a covenant with each other in marriage. It's very important that you have a covenant with one another. And in order to have a covenant, there has to be a level of submission between one another. The Bible also talks about us submitting one to another. It's not just the wife's job to submit. You have to submit one to another in marriage. There has to be some type of compromise in every situation and everything that happens in your marriage. And that was one of the things that we struggled with in our marriage because we did not know each other, because we got married so quick. We knew the spiritual aspect of each other, but in the natural, we did not really know each other. We had a very hard time submitting one to another. I had a very hard time accepting the way that he paid bills because it wasn't my way of paying bills. I had a very hard time with me saying, um, "Can I have money to go do this? Can I have money to go do that?" Um, and so those are things that we had to learn how to do so that we could become one. Because anytime that you have that friction, anytime that you have that division, you're not one. And so you have to be able to find ways around that so that you can really always have that oneness. And so what God began to do is strip us of ourselves individually. Everything that me and my husband achieved in the natural apart, God began to strip it away from us so that everything that we built our marriage upon was things that we got together. Like literally, we moved out of our house. We changed cars, everything that we had separate. Because remember, I said my husband and I both did the same thing, but my husband did. He built call centers on a very larger scale than what I built. I built small call centers. He built 500 seat call centers and above. And so he had a very good career going and very good income. I had mine, and so God began to take everything that we had separate and put us together as one. Not that we didn't share what we had separate. It didn't matter what car we got into. We never were selfish with anything that we had. But because there was a separation, God wanted to take the natural and use the natural as a form to build us in the spiritual. It wasn't the natural stuff that outside of me not wanting to share my space, um, really outside of me not wanting his clothes in my closet and his cologne where my perfume was and his I'll tell you a funny story. We had a prayer closet. I had a prayer closet. And so when my husband first visited my house, I had this big closet, and he wondered why all my clothes were in the linen closet and why all the linens were in the laundry room. And it was because I had turned my walk-in closet into a prayer closet. And so I remember the first time my husband went into the prayer closet. Now, mind you, we've married. He's moved in. He went into the prayer closet to go pray and had put all his stuff in, his prayer stuff in the prayer closet. I was like, what is he doing? Why is he invading my space? Like, why are you in there? Well, because it is now ours and he is now my husband. So God began to take these natural things and transform the spiritual part of me. And again, as I always say, and after the vows, I only discuss, I'll share portions of what we both went through, but really after the vow focuses on me and my journey and the parts of me that were good and the parts of me that were not so good and the parts of me that had to be changed in order to become this godly wife. Um, so back to the oneness. So God began to take our physical stuff, and we literally began to lose the physical things that we had that separated us. So we had to change cars. So my husband's car got recalled from, I can't remember what car it was at that time, but his car got recalled, and then we were down to one car, and then we had to get rid of that car, and then we ended up having to get a car together. Then the house I had the house previously before him, and so after that We had to get rid of that house and we had to go get another. Like everything that we had separate and apart, God began to do away with, literally. And everything that we have up until this day is something that we built together. It's something that we have obtained together. And so there's nothing that we have that we had prior to our marriage. We don't have anything right now that we had prior to us getting married. Little by little, God began to remove them. He replaced them, but He replaced it with things that we had to do together. And so, even still, with Him doing that, it took us a minute for us to realize that we were not still connected spiritually as one. So, my question is, how do you think you become one? What are some of the things that you do um, to get yourselves to be one? And how do you know that you're not one? I knew that I wasn't one with my husband when we could not, we could do ministry all day long. We were in tune with each other ministry wise. From the time that we walked into church and the time that we were preaching and teaching, we were one. But our first ministry is our marriage. And because from the time we walked in the house, we didn't have that same connection, I knew that we weren't one. So that was one of the reasons that I knew that we weren't one spiritually. And so the first thing that God began to do with me, of course, is deal with me, deal with Nadia. Why are you not one with your husband? Well, I wasn't one with him because I didn't submit to him. I didn't submit to him because I didn't trust him. I didn't trust him because I didn't know him. So I had to go all the way back to the beginning and get to know him. What are his likes? What are his dislikes? What do I like about him? What do I dislike about him? What are the things that I pray for? I had to look at my prayer life. What was I praying for in regards to my husband to become one with him? And most of my prayers were selfish prayers. Lord, change him. Lord, he got an attitude. Lord, he don't have no patience. Lord, this, Lord, that. And I wasn't praying for a union. I wasn't praying for God to get in our marriage. I was complaining. So I don't really think I was praying. I think I was just complaining, really, out loud to God, thinking I was praying. You have to get to a place where you really begin to invite God into your marriage, invite God into your relationship, invite God to make you one. You have to give Him permission. You really have to give Him permission. Becoming one is not something that just happens. It's a work in progress and you work at it every single day. You have to give God permission to come into your marriage and to mold you and make you guys one, to be on one accord. Once we did that in our marriage, we were unbreakable. There was nothing nobody could say. There was nobody that could come in and try to tell me something about my husband. There was nobody that could come tell him something about his wife, because whatever was said and done, we got through it. And to this day, we get through it because we're on one accord and we're one. And it's like, how do you separate one? If you're one entity, how do you separate it? You can't really. You can separate two. You can always cause a division in two. And so when I was being single, when I was being Johnson, even though I was a Neil, it was easy to try and divide us. It was easy to try and separate us. When I wanted to fulfill my own agenda, when I wanted to have my will over the will of our marriage, thank you, Holy Spirit, you really have to, what I want didn't matter. Because what Nadia want may not be what's best for the marriage. It is what I want, though. So I want to go do this. I want this. I want to go do this. I want that. And even though I'm saying we're doing it together, that may not be the best for that may not be what's best for our marriage. If you ask me where I want to be at right now, I will tell you, everybody know where I want to be at. I want to be in California. Why? Because I'm a mother. All my kids in California. All my, but we got a grandbaby. He's in California. So I want to be in California. Plus, I miss the ocean and the mountains. But I want to be in California, right? Or I want all my kids to come here, right? In a perfect world, we got spiritual kids everywhere and natural kids in California. I want everybody to be in one place. But if I try to move to California, that's what Nadia wants. But that is not what's best for my marriage because my husband is not going for it. He don't want no parts of California. He can visit and come home. The Lord would have to come down and say, move back to California before this man go to California. Now I know this. So what I want may not always be what's best for our marriage. And knowing that you're one is going to be compromised. And so while I can't move to California, I can go visit California. So there's a compromise. My husband knows my heart for being a mother. My husband knows my heart for that. So when the opportunity arises, he considers that and says it's time for us to go visit. It's time for us to go do this. It's time for us to go do that. Being one means the compromise and understanding each other's needs and being able to submit to those needs, even when you don't want to. Another thing about being one is knowing how to, as a woman, submit to your head. Being one has an order. You can't be out of order. So if I'm wearing the pants and I'm running a relationship and I'm wearing the breeches, we are not one. We are not one. There was a point in my marriage where I used to just run over my husband, not because he couldn't lead, but because he wasn't going to lead in chaos. And so he would bow gracefully and just let me have my way until I decided to stop running amok. Just because he allowed me to do what I wanted to do, it's just like God and his permissive will doesn't mean it was right, doesn't mean it was ordered. And for me, everything was peachy keen because he was letting me do whatever I wanted to do. He wasn't saying a word, and I was like, "Oh, I'm getting my way. We're good. We are on." I thought we was like on one accord. We are on one accord. We're doing good, because he was doing everything I wanted him to do. He was doing everything I wanted to do. But when God got a hold of him, he quickly let me know, "No, ma'am. One, you out of order. Two, you out of order. Three, you out of order. And four, you very unsubmitted. You're unsubmitted to me as God, and you're unsubmitted to your husband, as your head." So being one is more than just being in agreement with what's happening. It's really coming into the alignment with the biblical marriage and the instructions of the Lord. And so when you're not in that, you're definitely out of order. You're definitely sacrificing um, the unity of your marriage, the unity of your household. And when there's no unity at the head, guess what's happening with everybody else? Whether your kids are in your house or your kids are 3,000, 4,000 miles away, it's chaos with them too. Because the anointing that rests upon the head and the house overflows to them no matter where they are. Everything attached to you is going to be chaotic, especially if you're in leadership. So you definitely have to be careful with how you handle each other in marriage, because it not only affects your marriage, but it affects other people. It affects everybody that's attached to you. From day one, what we said when we said our marriage vows is that we wanted our marriage to be a ministry, and we have lived our marriage in a public life. I always say often, most of you know, we dated in public on Facebook. My husband proposed to me on Facebook, and God told us from day one that our marriage would be a ministry. So we've never really kept um, a lot of things hidden in our marriage. So because we truly want to adhere to what God has called it to be, which is a ministry. And in that, we had to learn to become one. We had to learn to submit to one another. We had to learn to allow God to be God and follow his instructions. And not all the instructions um, were ones that I like. My husband would tell me, God said do this and God said do that. And I am in no way, shape, or form in agreement with it. But I submit to it and I obey it. Like I said, if it was up to me, we would have been in California a long time ago visiting. But we had to wait on God to um, really open up that door and tell us it's time. There are many times I'm like, okay, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. And it wasn't time. So, what I want to encourage everyone to do is to find the areas in your marriage, in your relationship, in any covenant relationship. This After the Vows is about after the vows, and it is about, it is really geared toward women, single women, women that want to be married, engaged women, married women. Really gives you an idea of what to expect in a relationship, but really it gives you an idea of how to submit to God and how to build that relationship first. Um, but in any covenant relationship, notice I said covenant relationship, not just any relationship. In any covenant relationship, I want you to look in the areas of that relationship, whether it's parent to child, mother to father, husband to wife, any covenant relationship, covering the covering, any type of covenant relationship that you have. I want you to look at that relationship and see if you're one in that relationship. See if there's an expectation. If we're one, there should be an expectation on each side. There's certain things I expect my husband to do because he's one with me. Not because he's my husband, but because we're one. And whatever boundaries you have, whatever things that you set, what boundaries we have, and our expectations in our marriage may be different than the ones that I have set with my kids and my spiritual kids. But there's still an expectation because I have a covenant relationship with them. So there's still an expectation. And if you don't have that expectation, if an expectation is missing, then more than likely a covenant is missing. If submission is missing, then a covenant is missing. If honesty and integrity is missing, then more than likely the covenant is missing. If the covenant is missing, the oneness is missing. So go back and really analyze the relationships in your life. It's 2020. If the relationships in your life are not empowering you, are not equipping you, are not encouraging you, it might be time to let go of some of those relationships. It's time for us to do something different this year so that we can get a different outcome than what we had last year. Your this year should not be the same as last year. You left a decade. Don't start the new decade off doing the same things as you did last year. Don't start your new decade off in tolerating the same status quo relationships that you had last year, because you're going to get the same result. Speaking on marriage, your marriage should always grow in some areas, shape, or forms. It should always grow. If it lacked in one area last year, that's the area that you try to grow this year. That's the area that you say, you know what, I'm going to work on this. I'm going to work on this area of my life. I'm going to work on this area of my marriage. I'm going to work on this area of my covenant relationship. I'm going to work on this area. If you don't have a covenant relationship, with no one in your life, you really need to get some accountability. You need to be accountable to somebody. You definitely don't want to be a renegade. Not having accountability is like driving with no insurance. Not having covering of some sort, especially if you're in ministry, is just like driving with no insurance. You're just out there, just chancing it. So always have somebody to be accountable for it and somebody to be accountable to. Being accountable for somebody keeps you on track and keeps you doing the right things. To be accountable to somebody keeps you on track, and it should keep you from doing the right thing. Keep you doing the right thing. Excuse me. So get some accountability in your life so that you can understand what a true covenant relationship is and how you be one with another person or with a group of people or however it is, whatever your dynamic is. I'm talking about biblical dynamic and regular relationships. I'm not talking about no foolery. Don't y'all play me now. I'm talking about right standing biblical marriages, and I'm talking about relationships as far as, you know, parental relationship, friend relationship, church relationship, things of that sort. So that's pretty much what our topic was today, is to just a general conversation on becoming one in marriage, becoming one in your covenant relationships. I do hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, if you have any questions in regards to it, definitely inbox Apostle, inbox myself, and we can go in further with it. I do appreciate everybody's support. Again, their thoughts and prayers and text messages and everything in regards to Apostle. He is doing a lot better. We should be home in a couple of days and prayerfully be on a plane next Saturday heading to California. Um, Again, the books we do have Authority is Delegated Power, which is Apostle book. His book is individually by itself on sale at atnministries.org. It's actually on sale for $16.99. My book is the Women's Journal After the Vows. It is $25 on the website. If you want them signed copies, you can get them on the website. If you want to order them off of Amazon, you definitely can. Also, you can go to the website and get both of the books for $35, and they'll both be signed copies. Um, Definitely want to grab both of those. We do appreciate everybody that has supported us, every post that we put up. I mean, regarding the books and what we're doing, it's just getting multiple shares and things like that. So we really appreciate everybody supporting ATN Ministries. And definitely, if you have anything coming up, let ATN Ministry knows. We can post it on our website, and definitely try to support everyone else as well. So I thank you all for joining in. I thank you all for being a part of ATN Ministries. Prayerfully, we next Saturday, I believe we're going to not do a live show. We'll actually do a replay of one of the other shows, as we should be on a plane flying out. So we will do a replay, and then we may do something in the middle of the week. I'll check with Apostle, and I'll definitely post a flyer, post an update as to what we're going to do for the weekend coming up. All right. Well, thank you. Oh, one last thing. I do want to invite you guys to join the After the Vows Facebook group. It is a public Facebook group, and I'm getting ready to do a giveaway in the group for a free. I'm going to give away 2 free signed copies of After the Vows. So you definitely want to join the group and be a part of it to have that opportunity to get a free signed copy. Definitely join the Facebook group and After the Vows, and you can just search After the Vows. And again, it's a public Facebook group, and in there we're going to begin to discuss topics related to the book, discuss topics related to any types of relationships, and really topics that are plaguing us women today. So feel free to join that group and be a part of it and be a part of the discussions, okay? I thank you so much for joining, and God bless.